Right, a text question here from Mick, who says, since de-escalation, since the de-escalation in the Ukraine war has been mentioned, what is the panel stance on Russia, and how do we ensure de-escalation? Clive?
We totally opposed the invasion of Ukraine. We support the rights of Ukrainians to determine their own fate. We also support workers in Russia who are attempting to organise against Putin. But we also have to understand that Putin is a product of the West as well. In fact, without treading on too many toes, the Tory party should hand back the donations they got from Russian oligarchs, for example. And actually, by the way, Peter Mandelson, let's remember him, and he's links and liaison with Russian oligarchs as well. Putin was encouraged to integrate with the West, but only on the basis of their commodity production and so on. And frankly, it was a clash that was coming. We oppose totally the invasion of Ukraine, and the only solution, bluntly, is to build strong, united movements of workers across Eastern Europe to resist nationalist politicians who are perpetuating this terrible war.
David Kurten.
Well, I've spoken about this at length many times over the last 2 years, and you can't take what's happened in the last 2 years in isolation. This comes on the back of what the West did, the CIA and Victoria Nuland particularly, ousting a democratically elected president in 2014, Yanukovych, because he decided he didn't want to join NATO and he didn't want to join the EU, which is their right. What the West has done, the collective West, is put in a puppet in Poroshenko and then another puppet in Zelenskyy, and we've encouraged him to...
Well, Zelenskyy won an election.
He won an election in 2019 on the basis of peace with Russia, and he did a bait and switch at the behest of the deep state in the West, who basically controlled him.
You really have swallowed the Putin propaganda, haven't you?
It's not Putin's propaganda, it's actually reality, and it's actually what I'm talking about. So
it's a very strange reality.
Well, it is reality. I mean, you've just interrupted me there, so let me just finish and continue. So there was absolutely no need for the West to get involved in this on any side. We should have been trying to de-escalate from the beginning in February 2022.
So we should have just sat back and let Russia invade a sovereign country.
There was a peace deal in April 2022 that Putin and Zelenskyy worked out in Turkey with Erdogan. Boris Johnson went to Zelenskyy just after that, and the next thing we know, Zelenskyy said, no, we're not going to make peace.
This is pure Putin propaganda. You should be ashamed of yourself.
It's actually what's happened. I'm not ashamed of myself, and I'm actually saying the reality of the situation.
How much land should we let Russia take, then?
Well, if we had not gone in and agitated this and escalated and supported Zelenskyy to escalate, there wouldn't have been any land taken at all. Obviously, you had the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, who were Russian, who had been bombed by neo-Nazis attached to the Zelenskyy regime for 8 years. And
we might as well have Vladimir Putin sat where you are.
Well, I mean, that's just an insult.
You're an absolute disgrace. You're an absolute disgrace.
No, that's an absolute insult. And you can't
it was meant to be. It was meant to be.
You shouldn't call it. I'm not going to have... You're not calling me a disgrace, and that is really not good moderation, because that
it may not be good moderation, but I'm just reflecting what virtually every single person listening to this programme is saying. I want to hear from Hoz.
And we need to de-escalate.
You're not going to like what I've got to say, Ian.
Fine.
I'll tell you what it is. I agree with him almost 100% about every
Well, you don't surprise me at all.
Well, there you go. But the thing is this. A lot of people like to think to themselves that this is all Putin propaganda. It really isn't. This is reality. The fact is we've got a mainstream media that's telling us how to think, how to do things. I am not a Putin apologist. I couldn't whatever about Putin, okay? But the point is the people of Ukraine have been put in a position to be at war with Russia for no reason whatsoever.
Apart from the fact that Russia has invaded them.
Listen, Ian, they wanted peace, or they were told they're going to have peace, and they chose not. And the Americans and Boris Johnson and everything else have decided to carry on feeding money every single day to the Ukraine. Sorry, it's making a noise. To the Ukrainians, and all they're doing is trying to weaken Russia. So they think. All they're doing is money laundering money for weapons industry from the military-industrial complex. And anything else you want to say about it, for me, I'm 100% with him. And I'm not a Putin apologist. I'm actually a realist. The mainstream media want to make us feel like we're Putin apologists. We're not. We're looking at what's happened.
Okay,
All the time we're escalating,
David,
half
we've
a
heard quite
million
enough from
Ukrainians
you.
have died.
Clive.
We've got to stop that.
I thought you asked me first. You haven't asked William yet. But
Sorry.
Well, I'm happy to take another bite. But you haven't asked William.
I'm so appalled by what he said. I've forgotten your
It's the
contribution.
happy.
I have a slightly different
William.
view. I think the Russian invasion of Ukraine was utterly reprehensible, and I think any nation-state democrat has to stand with Ukraine in this. Basics, absolute basics. I think the West is in an awful position because 85% of the population of the world is represented by states that don't take this seriously at all and is trading with Russia without any problem at all. That's the difficulty we've got. Really, the people that are standing with Ukraine in this, which you describe as sort of nation-state democrats and so on, are Canada, the United States, the EU, South Korea, Japan. It's not, the rest of the world is taking all the fungible assets, all the oil, and that's the problem. Now, in terms of I don't want this conflict escalated. I've argued, one or two Tory MPs were arguing for the RAF to intercept Russian aircraft inside Ukraine. I'm against that sort of escalation. I think that's very foolish.
How do you de-escalate it? That was a question.
The sad thing is, Ian, I have doubts as to whether Russia can be beaten. That's the problem, and I fear the worst actually for Ukraine. I think it'll go on until Russia decides to stop. And I think actually the other thing that people don't think about, but actually partition is very common in conflicts after armistice. I mean, it's not just the history of.
But Ukraine is already partitioned.
I know it is, and that's the de facto. Yeah, and you won't. And the old Kissinger thing, you won't get back at the peace talks what you don't have on the ground. That's a sad thing. It's an absolute disaster.
Can I just add one thing? That my personal opinion on Keir Starmer is this, and George Galloway said it, and I'll say it again. I think within 6 months, if he gets the majority that he gets, we're going to end up with British troops on the ground in the Ukraine because we've got a media that's feeding us on how we should go and save this, save that.
I'm against that. I think
we need to make sure that our troops don't end up going into a hot war zone, okay, for other people.
Do you think if that was going to happen, it would have happened already?
No, it's going to happen when he ends up with when he gets a 400-seat majority. He'll turn and go, I've got the mandate of the people to do whatever I want, including getting our troops. I mean, he's already got 900 troops in Estonia or somewhere else in those places, and I can't see them not doing that.
A lot of people are experts on what
Tony
Starmer's
Blair
going
part
to do.
two.
No one
Tony
cares.
Blair part two.
Seriously, I'm a bit staggered, really, because we seem to be forgetting nobody or no ordinary person in the Ukraine or in Russia benefits 1 inch from this war. That's the reality.
I agree.
That's true.
That's the Russian speakers in Ukraine who were discriminated against under the Ukrainian regime are not being. Are not enjoying life in the Donetsk provinces or in Crimea now. Let's be blunt about it. And the reality is that it's hard to see a way forward, except there is war weariness. Russia, if it has another round of conscription, there'll be more opposition there. There's opposition now growing in Ukraine against the war as well. And we have to rely ultimately on the people of the two countries saying enough is enough. It sounds optimistic or utopian, but frankly, this is a war that has no benefit for ordinary people.
Well, we're agreed on one thing, Clive. We're agreed on one thing.
I'll tell you one thing our listeners seem to be agreed on, judging, and I'm scrolling through all these texts here, which Hoz can see, but the other three can't, if he wants to see. It doesn't make very good reading for you or David.
That's
People
fine.
are absolutely appalled by what you've both said.
Absolutely does not bother me in the least.
We will move on to a different subject, maybe with more agreement.